All right, well, thanks. Thanks everyone for joining in person and online. Why don't we kick it off? Mr. Chair, I'd like to do a roll call first before we welcome.
Good morning and welcome everybody. Todd Jason on behalf of the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, Attorney of the Board of Flat, Chair of AQCAC.
Hi, Megan Weil-Latchall, faculty member at Johns Hopkins University, and I represent on this council the Children's Environmental Health Advisory Protection Council of Maryland.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Rebecca Rear. I'm the Director of Climate Policy and Justice at the Maryland League of Conservation Voters. I stand up to people, a member of the general public on
AQCAC. Ben Hobbs, co-chair of Johns Hopkins, representing university.
Excellent. So now let's try to go online, council members.
Sania Amber, University of Maryland School of Medicine.
Hi, Ariel, University of Maryland School of Public Health. Good morning, everyone.
Hello, hello everybody. I'm Ross Salowich, University of Maryland, Atmospheric Chemistry.
Good morning, everybody. This is Anna Marshall from Baltimore Metropolitan Council.
I'll go. Good morning, Weston Young with Worcester County, but I'm representing the Maryland Association of Counties.
Good morning, everyone. Nicole Cook, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, and I'm representing agriculture.
Good morning. This is Sunny Park. I'm representing AICHE.
Okay, so I think we caught everyone online. Do we have a forum team? Sounds like we do. Should we maybe just around who else is in the room? The staff support for the council. Sure. Chris Hoagland, our director at MDE, here at the end of the table. Okay, well, so morning, everyone. Thanks again for joining. A couple of updates from MDE. The ozone season is winding down. We'll all recall that the one national ambient air quality standard that the state is not attaining statewide is the ground level ozone standard. The ozone season is nearly over, and we had a pretty good year this year. We exceeded the standard on 5 days. 2 of those were related to wildfire smoke. We were lucky with wildfire smoke this year. Canada had another terrible year. It would have been a record-shattering year if it hadn't been for the even worse year they had in 2023. But weather carried relatively little of that smoke down to us. There were some areas in Canada that had really terrible air quality, or in the northern U.S. that had really terrible air quality. But we were mostly spared this year. We also had decent weather. It wasn't too hot this summer, and it was also really humid. And it seemed the humidity kept ozone levels down on some of the really hot days. So next time you're feeling particularly sticky, you know, hey, maybe it's keeping the ozone down. So we'll see. We remain sort of right on the margin in terms of attaining standards. So we'll have more news after we bring through some processes with EPA in the spring and be the final data for 2025. Follow up with the council on whether we get over the edge for the ozone standard. You all read the newspaper, so you're also all aware that the federal government continues to take lots and lots of actions related to air pollution regulation. Many of the actions are making a lot of work we do here harder, but also more important. We are participating, or we're partnering with lots of other states to participate in EPA's regulatory processes. We're sending lots of letters, lots of comments regarding our place in line should we end up in litigation over several states taken. Some of the actions that the council has recently taken and is considering today will be important to sort of build some resilience in the state against some of these changes of federal policy. Just on Friday, EPA took another step to remove greenhouse gas reporting requirements for certain industries. You'll recall that when we last met in the council, we considered a reporting rule for thermal energy for the state. One of the purposes of which is to get the state off of federal data to understand the pollution impacts of heating fuels. So, and then today, we're considering an update to the RGGI program, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Emission, which regulates carbon dioxide from power plants in Maryland and our partner states. EPA is moving to continue to move to remove federal regulations related to greenhouse gases from power plants. So RGGI will be an important mechanism in Maryland and the partner states. I'm sure that we can make progress in that area despite federal rollbacks. So we've got 3 actions for you today. One is we're all going to take our medicine and update our fees based on legislation passed this year by the General Assembly. So we've got a fee package for you to consider. We have some updates to the anti-tampering rule, which the council worked on several times a few years ago, and we have some updates to report in regulatory for that. And then we have the RGGI action update of the RGGI program. That's a lengthy one, so we're going to walk everybody through it. Hopefully it all makes sense. And we're also welcoming a new / returning member of the council today, Rebecca Rare. Rebecca, welcome back, representing one of the general public seats. Glad to have you. So that's it for me.
Excellent. So I guess we'll start with the first presentation. We know that fees are.
Do we have minutes to approve before we get into the action?
Yes.
We can do that. Can everyone review the minutes? Anybody have any questions, changes, or comments? Got a motion to approve. Ben has moved. Do I have a second? A second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Second.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Second. I hear no nays, the motion passes, and we have approved. Now we can move on to business.
I just want to say, appreciate the detail, very detailed. It's a little while to read, but it's good to have it.
Okay, hi everybody. Some of you might already know me. I'm Sana Sarasak. I'm the manager of the Air Quality Permits Program, and I've been asked to kind of give you a background on the first of the MDE fee amendments that we're presenting today. So you can see here, Senate Bill 250 was enacted, and it requires an increase of an emissions-based fee. Just to give you a little bit of background, MDE must collect fees to support the ARA programs that are sufficient enough to support the programs. What we've seen, it started out, EPA had suggested a presumptive fee of $25 a ton. So in 1997, the regulation was $25 per ton of emissions. In 2008, we increased it to $50 per ton. And this new act now increases it from $50 per ton to $200 per ton. The reason why the increase is large is because just due to closing of facilities or changing or putting more emissions controls on, or changing fuels, our emissions-based fees that we collect are not enough to support our programs. We had probably about $1.5 million. We were collecting less year to year. We did a study of other states. Virginia has large application fees, maintenance fees, and an emissions-based fee. So does, Pennsylvania. Delaware is also looking to increase their fees. It's affecting all of the states. So we calculated out like how much we thought we needed. $200 per ton. We're estimating we'll bring about $1.9 million. The other part of the act removes the $2 million cap on unused funds in the Clean Air Fund. So it was $750,000 and they upped it to $2 million. And now they're just removing the cap altogether, because what's happening is we need to justify, the money needs to be in the Clean Air Fund. It can't be going to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. So we just removed the cap. So all of the unused funds that we collect in the Clean Air Fund now stay in the Clean Air Fund. So that's basically what this act was. We're just changing the regulation to change it to $200 per ton instead of $50 per ton. And also it can be adjusted in the future to reflect changes in the consumer price index. We're not really sure how that's going to play out now that the CPI data is questionable, but it is something that we reserve the right to increase if the CPI does allow us to add. So right now, our even though it says $50 per ton, our emissions-based fee is roughly like $75 or $76 per ton now already, but just based on the CPI increases since we enacted the $50. So it's not $50 right now, it's like $75, and now we're going to $200 per ton. That's it. That's all I have for one.
Good morning, everybody. Mark Stewart, Climate Change Program Manager. I'm going to briefly mention the second part of this fee proposal, which is an update to the Building Energy Performance Standards regulations. House Bill 49 passed this year, requiring a few changes to the BEPS program, including the requirement that we add a reporting fee, an annual reporting fee of $100 per covered building, adjusted for inflation. So we've updated the BEPS regulations as distributed to packets with basically a couple lines that makes that piece active. The BEPS reporting fee would become applicable to buildings that begin reporting, or that would report to us beginning next year.
I could just ask, have you received any questions, concerns, comments from the stakeholders as well?
Regarding the reporting fee?
Either fee.
I don't know that we've received any on the reporting fee. Certainly there was some debate in front of the legislature on all the parts of that bill. But have we received anything since then?
Clarifying questions? A few different clarifying questions about how it applies, mainly to campuses.
We haven't heard anything from our stakeholders either. We did notify them that it was effective in June, and we haven't received any pushback at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I think it'd be good for folks to appreciate what this supports, the approximately $3 billion. How many inspectors, engineers, management, staff you have, and how that compares to what you've had in the past. I know that there is past that under some governors that the MDE has been shorthanded, for example, which has caused problems and delaying in permits. So what's the size of the staff now? Engineers, inspectors, management, that this makes possible?
Yeah, so the air quality permits program, we have 11 staff engineers that issue all of the stationary air quality permits for the state of Maryland. And we have over 500 operating permit sources that this fee needs to collect. We have 2 administrative staff that have to fill these sources monthly. We've had a shortfall of like $1.6 million. So this is actually to recover that shortfall, and other states have been collecting far more money. But yeah, we have 11 staff engineers, 3 division chiefs for the entire state of Maryland. I'm not sure if this, what's been happening is when we were, I wouldn't say it's an audit, but when our Title V program was reviewed by EPA, that we were not collecting enough fees to support our program. So it doesn't just support issuing the Title V permits, it supports all of the inspectors and compliance inspectors. And the work is still the same, it's still complex, and it's still, even if emissions are going down, like an emissions-based fee model was actually just not the right way to collect fees, because your idea is you're trying to reduce emissions from sources. And so now all of the states are running into shortfalls of money. So we just don't have enough money to support all the inspections and the engineers that I have. So it's 11 staff engineers that issue the state permits.
Thanks. So how do these staffing levels compare to what we experienced over the last 10, 20 years under the O'Malley, Ehrlich, and other administrations? And compared to perhaps what you would like, or what you think is necessary to do the job. Are you shorthanded, or is this consistent with the past?
Well, so I mean, our program has been I've been in the program for 30 years. Our program has been as large as 25 people. We currently have 19 total, because when vacancies weren't filled, those permanent positions were removed from our program. So absolutely, if permanent positions were approved, that this money could also be used to fund those permanent positions. for that program. I mean, I don't want to say we've been working with the 19 that we've had, but our program has been as large as 25 of them.
Yeah, and so for us, the AIR program as a whole has grown a little bit over the last couple of years. To the tune of about 50 people. That was on a basis of about 160. The program is funded by the permit fees, as Sana mentioned, are a little bit smaller than they were back in the day. Our permits program, our compliance program, because over the years, position and costs have really come to get back. The way the funding works for those programs is that the fees on permitted sources only cover a portion of expenses. We get federal grants to help pay for some of these programs, but as the fee proceeds have shrunk, the AIR programs become more and more dependent on general funds. So that they go to backfill our budget as our fee revenues have fallen. So one of the reasons we proposed the legislation that updated this fee, and the General Assembly approved it, was to reduce our fee for general funds. And the general fund is part of the state budget that's in a deficit. So this is shifting us a bit off of general funds. And then right now, the AIR program is entirely off of general funds, thanks to Reg. We'll talk about in a minute, as the General Assembly changed our funding source. So instead of us using several $1 million per year in general funds, we're now funded entirely by current fees, federal funds, and Reg.
Okay. So I didn't hear the term shorthanded or anything else. There are some current positions that perhaps you didn't replace with a slight shrinkage in staff. But
we are hitting all of our targets. We are, Sana is approving permits within our turnaround times, and we are making all of our inspections. If you ask a bureaucrat whether I come more people answers, yeah, definitely. We could always use a couple more permits, especially the permits program is in a bit of a rush right now.
Right, something that would probably be more provable now that we're able to collect these funds. And the reason why we didn't get pushback from stakeholders is that Virginia's states like Virginia and Pennsylvania collect far more fees, but they do it with application fees. MDE does not charge an application fee. Every time they renew the permit, they have to file like tens of thousands of dollars to apply. They also have to do a maintenance fee and an emissions-based fee. So overall, they're paying, their facilities in Virginia, Pennsylvania, and other states are actually paying more than they are in Maryland. If we only have a base fee plus their emissions-based fee. So this $200 is actually less than what they're paying in other states. So we've had, so far, fingers crossed, we have not heard any stakeholder complain about the increases, because our smaller sources only emit a few couple tons a year, so it doesn't make that big a difference in their budget.
Thanks. Appreciate the explanation. Keep up the good work.
Do any other council members, either online or in the room, have follow-up questions? Ross?
Okay, thank you. Nice presentation. I just want to get on the public record what this is. I can see from the attachment sent that we're talking about pollutants other than carbon monoxide and other than carbon dioxide. So presumably we're talking about NOx and SOx, nitrogen and sulfur. But can someone just clarify what are the maybe two primary pollutants we're talking about here, two or three? And it is kind of interesting to me. This does help motivate people to reduce their emissions. I mean, you can scrub NOx and scrub SOx. Am I missing something, or is this nitrogen and sulfur? Thank you.
Sana, the whole list.
Yeah, so it's NOx, SOx, it's not CO, it is VOC and billable hazardous air pollutants that are not already accounted for in the volatile organic compounds. Particulate matter. So we do collect it on all of those criteria pollutants. We're required to collect emissions-based fees. But yes, but what's resulted is, all of our coal-fired power plants, switch to natural gas, and there's less emissions. And so we just, even though the permits are still complex and still complicated, and we still need to do the work, we still have all of those sources that we have to issue permits for, the emissions are going down. So we were just bringing less money in to support the programs.
And as a follow-up, I'm curious, do you or anybody else know what is the primary pollutant and tonnage that's contributing to this money, this fee? It's good to just have that in the public record.
Yeah, I would think NOx is probably the largest pollutant.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Any members of the public or anybody else in the room who has anything to add before we move to a vote? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve as requested for the fees? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next item.
Thank you very much to council. Our next item is some amendments to our anti-tampering regulation. Catherine, welcome.
Hello. Sorry to everyone online who can't see me. My name is Catherine Seaman. I'm
They went closer over that way.
here.
Picking up sound.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, it's right.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm a natural resources planner in the regulations division. And
Yes, but she's been here for 1 year. Welcome, Catherine.
Yeah.
You're doing fabulous.
Aaron, you need to pull up PowerPoint.
yeah, I can share this screen. Can you see it now? Yep. All right.
There it is. And here's the pointer. We can try. Otherwise, I'll.
Okay. So today I'm presenting on our Are you muted? Okay, can everyone hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start over. Maryland and the EPA have regulations to address those who tamper with vehicle emissions control systems. Today's proposed amendment deals with amending the record-keeping section only and does not alter the current regulations to monitor and control tampering. Next slide. Tampering can take two basic forms, removing hardware, filters, and catalysts in the stock emission control system. This hardware can be located in the engine or in the exhaust system. The other form is through replacing or altering the software or calibrations that control engine operation, sometimes referred to as tuning. Tuning may increase engine emissions, allow a vehicle or engine to operate without emissions controls, or prevent the onboard diagnostic system from recognizing that the vehicle or engine is functioning differently than originally designed and certified. Tampering with vehicles results in excess emissions of nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, and other pollutants. Next slide. Tampering with a vehicle's emissions control system is illegal under existing state regulations, COMAR 2611-2002, and the Federal Clean Air Act. Both existing Maryland and federal law prohibit the removal, alteration, or otherwise tampering with a vehicle's pollution control equipment. Maryland regulations also currently prohibit the operation of a motor vehicle that has had its air pollution control equipment tampered with or removed. In February 2022, MDE adopted an amended regulation that clarified and expanded Maryland's existing COMAR 2611-2002 pertaining to tampering with vehicle emission controls, selling vehicles with inoperable emission control systems, and selling devices that prevent emission control systems from operating as designed. Further, the regulation required a vehicle dealer or business that sells, auctions, or transfers a motor vehicle to maintain records confirming all air pollution control systems are in operating conditions at time of sale. Next slide. So today, the purpose of this proposed action is to repeal Section F of COMAR 2611-2002, adopted in February 2022, that required a vehicle dealer or business to maintain records confirming all air pollution control systems are in operating condition at the time of sale. We were notified by dealers during the most recent anti-tampering regulation development that since they do not necessarily perform safety inspections, they do not always have the ability to determine if an air pollution control system is in place or if a vehicle has been tampered with. However, Maryland vehicle safety inspections are managed by a Maryland State Police certified program, and these safety inspections include checks of emission control equipment. Next slide. In Maryland, vehicles are required to pass a safety inspection primarily when being registered, sold, or transferred, and when a resident moves to Maryland from another state. Generally, the seller or transferor of the vehicle is required to obtain the inspection certification. To obtain an inspection certification, a seller must have their vehicle inspected at a licensed vehicle safety inspection station in Maryland. There are approximately 1,600 of these facilities throughout the state, and after a vehicle inspection is conducted, records of the inspection are submitted digitally to the Maryland Vehicle Administration. Next slide. The MDE records of inspection are housed on a server-based system developed by Tyler Tech. All inspections as of July 1st, 2020 are on a digital format. Currently, MDE receives the vehicle certification when the vehicle passes for registration purposes. As of now, the system does not provide fail rate statistics for component areas. The Maryland State Police are in the process with the developer to work these statistics into the system for future needs. MDE's compliance program will continue to work closely with MBA and the State Police with the development of the system to ensure that tampering data needed for compliance determinations are accessible to the department. And next slide. Any questions?
But just make sure that I understand what's going on here. So vehicles get checked at lots of points along their lives to make sure that somebody's not tampering with the pollution control rules, right?
Yeah.
And what you're asking today is to roll back one specific piece of that having to do with vehicle dealers.
Yes.
Dealers and you believe that that's not going to result in any additional tampering, right?
No, because vehicles can't be sold or transferred unless they have been inspected. So either way, they're being checked and we know that they are compliant.
There's this entirely other system that the state police run through.
Yes.
That's making sure that that happens. So we don't need the dealers doing it, right?
Yeah.
And the dealers don't actually do these safety inspections before they're selling them. So they don't have the information to certify one way or the other.
Exactly. They weren't always capable of doing so, and it's pretty redundant when they're already being checked by the state police. Yes.
Is there a way to make it so that it sounds like the system isn't actually collecting the statistics yet? So can we not roll back the requirements on the dealers until we know that the Maryland State Police data is available?
Yeah, we have been in contact with them and we kind of asked for a timeline and they said they weren't completely certain. It's in the process of happening right now. So I think I'll defer to Randy on that one if you want to roll back.
Sure. Just so make sure we're on my cords back here. But just for this was something we identified with the vehicle dealers coming straight out of the last time that we adopted the final regulation. This was a learning process for us as we were going through this. As you all may recall, we had the auctioneers and insurance agencies all having to do these individual checks and tampering. They're like, we don't do this. So we sort of learned that through the process and created those exemptions for them back then. At the same time as we were writing these regulations, the vehicle dealers were coming to us saying that this isn't right. We don't necessarily do this. Now, as Catherine mentioned, there are 1,600 facilities throughout the state that perform these vehicle inspections, but vehicle dealers may be certified to do that. Some of them are doing that. Most of it's kind of more smaller scale shops. So having this regulation requirement requiring them to do this is just not the right step. They immediately came forward and told us there's a Maryland State Police program. It's also, the records are submitted through MDE. So we did reach out right away. Our compliance inspector back there, John Artis, and we all communicated with the state police and learned, okay, this is the problem. These are the people who are performing these inspections and collecting this information. The vehicle dealers, even though it's on the books right now as a regulatory requirement, they're not capable of doing it unless they're one of those inspection sources. So it doesn't make sense for us to keep this record on the book, keeping them on the hook for something they're not really set up to do. That makes sense.
It just makes me nervous that there's nothing going to be in place and there's no timeline for when this data will be available.
It is in a sense that the inspections are taking place, the digital records being sent to MDE. If, for instance, John, you become aware of a certain vehicle, we can pull up that VIN number and run it through a system and get it a pass-fail record from that. It may not be as detailed as what we want right now, which component or something like that, but it gives us some indication. And it is something that we're just continuing to work with them. They, you know, government runs a little slow sometimes. So state police is working with the contractor, but we haven't gotten date scheduled yet to meet with them and further discuss this. But
clarifying questions. What we do have access to the state system right now is pass fail.
Correct.
That exists right now. It's just if it's a fail,
We don't know why.
we don't know which thing.
That's, yeah.
So, yeah, so for the purposes of catching vehicles that are tampered, would the current system be sufficient for that? Or do you update more detailed information?
you're saying the current system through MDE and the state police.
Yeah.
And John, maybe I'll let you.
So I mean, as far as I understand, yes, like if a vehicle.
Sorry.
Good point. Yeah, so as far as we understand, if a vehicle has tampered emission controls, it can't pass the safety inspection, right? It's a fail. Like, I think the record keeping issue is they don't really flag why it fails. It's the same thing as if it has headlights that don't work or bad brakes. But for the purposes of this role, like if it has to fail, if it doesn't have functioning emission controls, it doesn't pass the safety inspection. So that should cover the.
So it keeps the vehicle off the road effectively.
Right, in order to pass it.
Is.
Right. In order to pass it, they say you failed, you have to fix your emission controls before we'll register you. So
there are other backup systems as well, like our VEEP program.
Yeah.
We'll catch these type of things. And I just want to point out, just for the sense of the scale of this issue, EPA had been, I imagine they still are, very aggressive. They came out and the people who are manufacturing, producing, doing the installations, they levied some heavy fines. They've come down and shut down a lot of these businesses. We've identified a few issues in the state ourselves of shops that were advertising tampered vehicles, like, hey, look at us, we got stacks in it. They were blatant about it, but you know, we were pretty vigilant about observing this. So I feel like the problem is diminishing. You probably have older trucks still on the road that just haven't been identified or been through the system to be resold and get an inspection process, and those are harder to catch. But state police are even trained with that. If they notice something that's blatant dually stacks and blowing black smoke, they can pull it over and have that inspected and reworked. Moving in the right direction.
You anticipated my questions. But the first part of my question was, do you have a sense of what the tampering rate is through the current system, through the state police and MDE? Is this prevalent? Do they find a lot of failures?
To my knowledge, has not been.
So I was emailing with the state police, and we did ask about that, and they said occasionally here and there you will see a failure from it, but it's not very prevalent. They didn't have any statistics because they, don't have that information yet, but they said it's not super common, but it does happen.
The other question was enforcement. So you address enforcement of people who are advertising, selling, or tampering. But what happens to the user who shows up in the inspection station if their vehicle is found to fail? Do they get a fine or anything?
Through VEET, maybe Carl, I said we've got a whole team here that are like, so VEET, is it a 2-year process, or how long do they have to fix their vehicle before they?
Normally, Carl Munder with Vertical Sources. Normally they have, or they come in for a VEET inspection. You need to remember the VEET inspection is just pretty much from the I-81 corridor to the I-95 corridor with some outlying counties like Queen Anne. So if you come in and fail for a test in general, you need to go get your vehicle fixed. And normally you have, I want to say maybe 90 to 120 days to get it. I'm not exactly sure on the exact time frame to have the vehicle repair and come in for a retest. And if you fail it again, you're allowed to get another 90 days. And they are progressively reducing the time frame that you can, fail and come back and get it.
I think I missed a slightly different question.
Okay.
It's not failing VEET, but in an inspection, you can fail VEET, but it's your car fails. I'm talking about somebody who's at the inspection, they find that it's tampering. Manufacturers, have machine changed.
Well, they won't get their certification, so they're not able to generally either operate or sell that vehicle. So it's sort of, they're just having to get the vehicle fixed at that point to be able to utilize.
The penalty is that you can't transact.
Yeah, if I may, Randy and Mr. Chairman, the safety inspection requires the presence of a functioning emission control system at the time of the safety inspection. As Randy was saying, and the chair here was saying, if you do not have that present of the equipment, no matter what it is, you do not receive the safety inspection, which means therefore that vehicle cannot be registered in the state. That's the enforcement mechanism. And 9 times out of 10, obviously, if it meets the requirements, once it's in the VEET area, it will go in. It's required, no matter what the age of the vehicle is, to get the VEET inspection. So that's another way of the state enforcing the functionality of the system.
Can I add something as well? I moved here a year ago and I came from Indiana, so I had to re-register my car. And I had just bought that car only a couple months prior, and my car failed, not because of tampering, but apparently when I bought it, it was missing the caliper bolts that hold your brakes in. So my brakes were rattling around, not being held down. And so when I failed, much to my shock, I was waiting at the place where I had gotten the safety inspection done. And they told me that if I wanted to leave with my car, I had to sign a release saying that I understood that, it was not safe. So I'm not sure if they would do that for tampering, but I had to get it fixed. I left my vehicle there. And then once I had it fixed, they said, okay, now you passed, I can have your certification. So.
Good real life story. It's clear that the system works.
Other council questions, either in the room or online?
Could you just not get your car registered in Maryland? I know there's like a lot of Virginia plates in Maryland. Like, yeah, you just say, okay, I'm gonna just keep my Virginia registration.
You can roll dirty. I mean, you run the risk of, getting pulled over and other things. So, I mean, your vehicle's not registered. You're not going to get the stickers that go on your license plate, the whole 9 yards. So, sure, people do illegal things, but
So I guess what would happen is if you did that, and when you went to renew your stickers in Virginia, they would say you don't live here anymore. We're not going to give you your stickers.
typically the way.
Other questions from the council? Anybody online have questions?
Okay. Anybody else from the public or otherwise in the room who have questions or comments before we take a vote? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the?
I move to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say
Aye.
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 Okay.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you for the presentations and for answering all the questions. That was great. And now we're up for Reggie. Thank you. Thanks to council for that. So for Reggie, it's a big one. So we're going to walk everybody through it. I'm going to start with some overview stuff and then turn to the team. Closer to the mic. All right, we'll get the presentation up. So I'll start and then I'll hand it over to the team. We have Scott Zaharko and Luke Vishnevsky here from the Reggie team. So the regulation you all have before you is the product of the latest agreement among all of the Reggie states to update and modernize the program, which you'll see we do periodically. Next slide, please. Next one, some background on Reggie. So next one, please. What is Reggie? Reggie is one of our oldest and most successful partnerships with other states related to climate change. The regulation launched in 2009 after several years of coordination among the states. It's a first of its kind cap and invest program for carbon dioxide from power plants. The map you see on the screen here shows in green the 10 states who participate in Reggie, Maryland on up the coast through Maine. Pennsylvania and Virginia are both not participating at the moment as they work through some legal processes. But the 10 states in green are the original 10 who launched the program back in 2009. Next slide, please. It's a cap and invest program. What is cap and invest? It's relatively simple. It's just 4 different pieces. The first thing is that we require carbon dioxide sources, in the case of this program, power plants, to turn in allowances for their emissions. So if a power plant in Maryland emits 1 ton of carbon dioxide, they now owe MDE 1 Reggie allowance at the next compliance deadline. Step 2 is that we only create a certain number of allowances. There are only so many that can go around. That makes it a cap. The third thing is that once someone holds one of these allowances, they can sell it. The allowances can be freely traded. And that makes it a cap and trade program with all the benefits that we've learned that these programs have for reducing pollution, where you have there's a value to these allowances. That's now an economic incentive for all of the regulated sources to reduce the number of allowances they need by reducing their pollution. And it's a very efficient way to find pollution reductions. What Reggie did was it added a 4th element. It said when we're trying to figure out how to get these allowances that the regulators create every year out to the market, what if we auction them off instead of distributing them for free, which is typical for a cap and trade program. So the states auction these allowances. We hold 4 auctions per year. That raises proceeds for the states that then fund energy and consumer benefit and community projects. So those 4 things together are why we call Reggie cap and invest. And Reggie was the first program to deploy that model at scale. Next slide, please. So Reggie's been very successful since it launched in 2009 across the region. Carbon dioxide pollution from power plants has been cut in half. The decline has been much steeper in Maryland than the rest of the Reggie region. We're at 68% reduction. So both in Maryland and the Reggie region as a whole, it's a much more rapid decline in CO2 from power plants than we've seen in the rest of the country. This graph here shows Maryland's Reggie covered emissions. It covers most of the CO2 from the power sector in Maryland. There are some power plants that are too small to be covered by Reggie, but the vast majority of tons are covered by Reggie. And so you can see between the pre-Reggie period and the post-Reggie period, we've had really significant declines. Next slide, please. So we raise proceeds through the quarterly RGGI auctions. Those proceeds go to the Maryland Energy Administration that distributes them to various programs. Annual auction proceeds in recent years have grown significantly, providing additional resources for energy programs and consumer benefit programs. The pie chart on the right shows how the RGGI proceeds are spent under state law. There's a formula for how MEA distributes the funding. Half of RGGI money we raise goes towards bill payment assistance in low-income households, and then the other half is split between energy efficiency and clean energy programs. Lots of different programs in Maryland are funded by RGGI. Much of the air program here at MDE is funded by RGGI as a pollution reduction program. Most of the state's electric vehicle incentives are funded by RGGI. Lots of energy efficiency projects are funded by RGGI. Next slide, please. The states estimate benefits every year. We all work together on an annual report detailing how we invest the proceeds. And over the 15 years that we've been doing this, 15 plus years, we've run up some pretty high numbers in terms of the benefits of all the investments across the region. RGGI is a relatively well-studied program. There's a lot of data. It operates very transparently. There are some websites where you can find some independent assessments of RGGI. RGGIprojectseries.org is a good place to start. RGGI has been very successful at its sort of primary goal from the department's perspective with the regulation, which is reducing CO2 for power plants, but also more broadly, the goals of all the investments about improving economic activity and reducing bills. So next slide, please. So we only do the regulation side at MDE, right? All of the money goes to other agencies. A little bit comes back around to fund our operations. The states periodically convene program reviews. RGGI's been around for a long time. It gets stale, so the states since the beginning have convened every couple of years to review how the program has been performing and establish new rules out in the future. The first program review concluded in 2013, the second one 2017, and the third program review we just concluded this summer. The program review ends when all the states around the table reach a handshake and say, yep, we think the program should go this direction. So we're all going to turn around and amend our own regulations to reflect this broader regional approach. So that's the step we're at right now with the third program review. All 10 of the RGGI states are starting their regulatory processes like we are doing here in order to all change our regulations together. Next slide. There were 3 priorities that the states established in this agreement. The first is energy affordability. Bills are going up, rates are going up. That's a problem. We wanted to make sure that RGGI wouldn't be contributing to that challenge and would continue to contribute to the solution as it has for decades by investing in things that reduce bills. So that was the first priority, energy affordability. Go back real quick. The second one was stability and certainty. There's been a ton of uncertainty in the power sector recently, with especially lots of changes in federal law. So the RGGI state said, let's establish a very clear trajectory for the power sector within our region for the next 12 years. And the third one is long-term commitment. Demonstrate that the 10 states remain committed to decarbonizing the electricity sector and are putting a long-term policy in place to do that. So next slide, please. Okay, so there are a lot of lines on this graph. We're going to go over them one by one, but this shows the regional RGGI cap out through 2040 under various scenarios. We'll start with the blue lines next slide, which represent the overall cap. This is the total amount of CO2 that the states allow over time. The light blue line is the current cap in the current regulations. When you add up the numbers in Maryland's regulation with the numbers in Delaware's, New Jersey's, et cetera, you end up with that light blue line. In the last program review, the state said we're going to reduce our emissions by 30% in the 2020s, and then we'll figure out what to do in the 2030s when we reconvene. Figured out what to do, so now we have the dark blue cap. This is what the regulation in front of you represents for Maryland's share. The new cap would start reducing more rapidly than the old one in 2027 and would have scheduled reductions in CO2 pollution through 2037. Next slide, please. But it's very uncertain what the environment will be for deep reductions in the power sector going forward. So RGGI has what we call stability mechanisms. These are provisions built into the regulations where the RGGI program will automatically adjust to outside circumstances, especially ones that states don't foresee. There are lots of external trends that can affect the price in RGGI, the value of RGGI allowance. RGGI is not a carbon tax. The government doesn't say what the carbon price is. It's a pollution regulation. They say what the pollution outcome is. But because it works with tradable allowances, the market does find a price. So we don't say what the price is. However, we don't want the price to be anything in the world. We don't want there to be endless uncertainty over what a RGGI allowance will cost. So the states have built in stability mechanisms that effectively provide collars around the price, where if the price strays outside a particular range, the program automatically adjusts in a way to bring prices back within the desired range, and that makes prices more stable, program outcomes more certain. So the states analyzed how much the RGGI price could vary up or down based on a whole set of external factors. We made a very pessimistic scenario where RGGI would be very expensive because it would face a lot of headwinds, and we made an optimistic scenario where RGGI would be less expensive because we'd be getting a lot of progress from other areas. Those represent those two dashed lines on this graph here showing the potential RGGI allowance prices out through 2038. And then we established what these stability mechanisms would be, where the cap just automatically adjusts to either throw cold water on a hot market or to, if it's a cold market, to keep things going and take advantage of low prices to reduce emissions more. And the analysis showed that the stability mechanisms would reduce price volatility to within those solid lines, which are price trajectories in the regulation at which these mechanisms kick in. Next slide, please. Just to explain the scenarios, next slide. So one of those mechanisms is called the cost containment reserve, or CCR. It's the one that protects us against high RGGI prices, unforeseen high prices. Next slide, please. So in this agreement, there is an existing cost containment reserve that's been in place in RGGI for a long time, about 10 years. The regulation in front of you strengthens that and makes that mechanism larger. It will have more effect and will give us greater certainty that it will limit prices from rising above its trigger. However, given all the uncertainty, the states also added a second version of that stability mechanism. The way this stability mechanism works is if the RGGI price rises above a predetermined point, it makes the RGGI cap more generous. It relaxes it. It does that by providing additional allowances to the market. The price of an allowance is based on the balance of supply and demand. If you increase the supply, the price is going to go down. So the cost containment reserve is an automatic mechanism that provides additional allowance supply to the market if the price stands higher. So this agreement makes that mechanism larger, so it'll have a larger effect, and then adds a second one on top of it in case we do need those extra allowances because we're not getting the emission reduction we need from various external factors. So the program added this second cost containment reserve, and that's represented by the orange and yellow lines. So that blue line, which is the cap, it gets really tight out in the 2030s. We want to see that. We want to see a rapid reduction in CO2 pollution. But if that's not possible, then these additional mechanisms, these cost containment reserves, will relax that and ensure that over the long term there is sufficient amount of supply if it's really needed. Yes, Dr. House.
So just to clarify how this would function, if things turn out to be a lot tighter than people thought, we of course see lots of surprises in energy markets, things with the alternative compliance payments, renewables, and so forth. Nobody anticipated we would see the sort of prices and need for that we have now. And that certainly could happen here. So if it turns out that more allowances are demanded than the yellow line, then the allowance price could then start to go up again to clear the market. So we won't go above the yellow line. Is that the correct interpretation here?
Above the yellow line in terms of the number of allowances we make available?
Number of allowances.
Yeah, correct. So the yellow line is the maximum number of allowances that the RGGI states would make available.
That's the number of allowances that would be at the stabilized price. Mm-hmm. If more than that number of allowances, the emissions exceed that, then there aren't more allowances released, so that would then allow the price to go up again.
Yeah.
So the price could go up higher than what's envisioned by the orange and yellow lines in an extreme case.
Yes, that's
And
right.
we are assured, this is the advantage of a cap, we are sure that the emissions will not go at least above the yellow level as a worst case.
Yeah, that's correct. And we established the prices associated with those through analysis where we sort of today threw lots of pessimism at the model and said, how high would prices go? And so right now our analysis says that that wouldn't be the case. That would be something even worse than we could envision in our analysis. But yes, these are not what you will call firm price caps. These are soft price caps. We will not make an unlimited number of allowances and therefore an unlimited amount of pollution available if prices go above that. There is still a firm cap, as you mentioned.
Right. So this remains a cap, ultimately a cap system rather than a pollution penalty system. At that price.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's correct. Yep, sure thing. So next slide. We've analyzed the impacts of these proposed changes on various factors. So first, regional emissions. This is a projection for the entire region, CO2 from the whole region under our pessimistic assumptions where the pollution is higher and our optimistic assumptions where the pollution is lower. And this is in the existing program where the cap is not getting tighter over time in the 2030s. And so the emissions decline in the absence of these changes is uncertain, depending on external factors. Next slide. But when we, yes, sure.
So the pessimistic reference, that's the light blue line?
The pessimistic one is the orange one up top.
No, I mean like, going back to the allowances. That.
Yes, so right now, yes, those first two lines are under a scenario where the RGGI follows that light blue line.
Okay.
That is our reference case in this scenario. What if we don't change the program at all? Where will emissions reductions? So on the next slide, those two dashed lines represent two scenarios of where emissions would be across the region if we don't update the program. And it's very uncertain. But when we update the program with all of these stability mechanisms in place under either pessimistic assumptions or optimistic assumptions, pollution goes down. So it's more certain that we will be reducing CO2 pollution.
It's sort of a little confusing that they don't all start from the same point in 2028.
Yep, that's true. And so a couple of reasons for that are one, it's looking a couple years in the future. The model is starting in 2025. Another one is part of it's the nature of how the electricity models work, where they will respond immediately in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect in the real world. It's a bit of it's an artifact of the analysis. But the modeling is useful for understanding the direction and magnitude of impacts, and not the exact amounts. So the program changes will ensure that we are reducing emissions and give us much more certainty. Next slide, please. The states also evaluate the impact on bills. A lot of numbers on this screen, okay? This analysis, if you want to look in more detail, is available on regi.org. But we evaluated impacts to the average residential, commercial, and industrial electricity bills under our optimistic and pessimistic scenarios and under different versions of how the program would function. The overall conclusion is that there's no material impact on electricity bills from RGGI in this analysis. The final set of numbers in each of these boxes is a percentage difference in the average bill over the time period in these different categories. You can see that some of them, the number is positive by a fraction of a percent in our more pessimistic ones. Most of them, the impact is negative by a fraction of a percent, meaning that RGGI would be marginally reducing electricity bills. As you go from left to right, it's pessimistic versus optimistic. Next slide. As you go from the top to the bottom, you are either not accounting for how we spend the money at all on the top, which are the worst numbers, to accounting for how we spend the money on the bottom. RGGI, we collect revenues and we invest them in things that benefit ratepayers. If you imagine a scenario where we collect all that money, pile it up, and lit it on fire, you would have the top row with the worst numbers. That's not how RGGI works. We invest all that money. So the bottom row is the correct one to look at, and in all scenarios, RGGI was reducing electricity bills when we accounted for how we invest the proceeds.
Yes. Just looked at on a state-by-state basis for Maryland, or
just across the entire industry?
This is the entire region. Downscaling this sort of analysis, you get some pretty high uncertainty. So we can consider doing that, but we have much more confidence in the overall results. Again, as rough direction and magnitude of impacts. The direction in this case being probably negative and the magnitude being extremely small. Okay, next slide. We also analyze the economic impacts of RGGI. Similar conclusion, good impacts, but very small. It's a large economy. RGGI is a large program, but not compared to the economy across the 10 states. So when we evaluated the impact on employment, gross state product, and disposable personal income across the region, the impacts in percentage terms are in green, and they're very small but positive, confirming that RGGI generally does good things for the economy and doesn't really slow it down while we're reducing pollution. And this is also posted in more detail at RGGI.org. Next slide. Okay, so the next steps. The states have an agreement. Now we are all changing our regulations because the changes come into effect in 2027. So we will need to finalize this regulation by next year. Those changes will come into effect in 2027, and the states will reconvene program review shortly thereafter in 2028. We always schedule a program review to reconvene a couple of years after the last one ends. So we'll be back here after the 2028 program review ends with more updates to the program several years from now. Okay, next slide. So that's what the regulation before you is intending to accomplish. Now we'll walk you through a couple of the pieces, Scott or Luke, so you can see how these changes map to the package in front of you.
So that's quick questions for historical perspective. So we're talking about prices. So we've seen the revenues from RGGI go up about fivefold over the last 2 or 3 years. For quite a while, the price was at the floor, and maybe now the price is at the ceiling or somewhere in between. Can you give us just sketch out kind of the history since the beginning of RGGI, where the prices have been, which I think is generally been bouncing along the floor until recently. Is that right?
Yeah, so RGGI early on, RGGI was designed in the mid-2000s, came into effect in 2009. There was the financial crisis in 2009, which the states did not foresee, and also the fracking boom. And the early years in the program, the price was very low because the sector was reducing pollution a lot faster than the RGGI caps required. So there were more allowances than needed, more allowances than were demanded, so the price was very low, and the RGGI program has a floor, so the price of an allowance cannot go down to zero. In the early years, it was down along the floor. After the first program review concluded in 2013, the states significantly improved the ambition of the program. Prices came back up off the floor, $5, $6, $7, $8 per ton range. Instead of two and change, which was the floor. The program started to get stale again during the Obama administration. The states reconvened the second program review. And the program sort of followed a pattern where new program, the price would go up because it's ambitious, but it turns out the states, maybe we were a little too cautious and we underestimated how quickly pollution would decline and the program would become stale, so the price would fall back down. We saw that during the second program review back in 2015, 2016, 2017. The states put a new program in place, the price came back up. In recent years, the price has gone up significantly after our price projections from the last program review were actually spot on right until Russia invaded Ukraine. And then we've had lots of changes in the energy sector, inflation across the board, and recent changes by the Trump administration that have led people in the market to think that RGGI allowances are a lot more valuable because the more headwinds RGGI faces, the more expensive a RGGI allowance would be. So the price has been relatively high the last couple of years. That's why the regional proceeds I showed early on were really high. So right now the price is in the low to mid $20 per ton. That's pretty high. That is a little bit above where the new price triggers for the cost containment reserve will be set. So we don't say exactly where the price is going to go, but right now it's in the territory where the program will continue to intervene to reduce price by increasing supply. The short answer, it's been up and down in the past. It's pretty high right now.
We anticipated the electricity demand growth with data centers. If that's realized, there may be continued pressure on the upward side.
Yes, that's true.
And so but we'll still have a cap in place, so that's very important for us. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Scott.
My name is Scott Zarko. I'm with the Regulation Division, the Air Quality Planning Program. Our Maryland CO2 Budget Trading Program is COMAR 2609. This is 4 chapters. Throughout these are the 4 areas that we made amendments to based on model rule already. First is implementing the policy changes, cap stability mechanisms that Owen described, and changes to the cap itself. That occurs in Chapter 1 and Chapter 4 if you care to follow along. Secondly, we are removing offsets. That is Chapter 3. We were repealing the entire chapter. In the previous program review, it was discussed removing offsets. Half the states decided to do that. The other half decided to hold on to them. The program has not been utilized all that much, and it has been decided by all of the states this time to. Third is eliminating obsolete accounting mechanisms for industrial sources and long-term contracts. That would be Chapter 2. And finally, there were just some clerical changes made throughout the regulation, mostly wordsmithing, definitions, references, things like that. The size and structure of the cap that occurs in Chapter 2. The cap is being reduced to 69,000, or just shy of 70 million tons. It was just shy of 76 million tons in the previous model rule. They declined by an average of about 8.5 million tons per year, which is approximately 10.5% of the 2025 budget. After that, from 2034 to 2037, they declined by a little over 2 million tons, which is approximately 3% of the budget. And then subsequent years are set to match the 2037 cap, and no adjustments are made by that time. As Erwin mentioned, there'll be another program review that will address that. Next slide. The cost containment reserve. That is the first of the stability mechanisms. There is, so go over it again. As mentioned, this puts a cap on the price at the high end. This is a reserve that's only made available if needed. The amendments add a second tier. We refer to them as CCR Tier 1 and CCR Tier 2. Both of those have been set at 2,130,856 allowances. And the second tier is set behind specific rules that will only be implemented if the first tier is off. I just wanted to point this out. After we sent the materials out, it was brought to our attention by our Attorney General's office that we need to add just a little bit of clarifying language to that, to the CCR Tier 1 and Tier 2 allowance definitions. This is not in your packet. This was added just recently. All this does is better clarify the relationship between the CCR Tier 1 trigger price and the CCR Tier 2 trigger price and their respective allowances. So that's highlighted. 34.2 is the Tier 1 trigger, and 34.3 is the Tier 2 trigger price. Next slide. The emissions containment reserve. This is the other stability mechanism. This is on the low end. The amendments increase the minimum reserve price, which essentially replaces the emissions containment reserve. The emissions containment reserve was a reserve of allowances that are withheld if the price falls too low to maintain that range of prices for allowances. And beginning in 2027, it is removed and it's replaced with an increased minimum reserve price, which matches the existing trigger price. This was something of a clarification and redundancy. The new minimum reserve price is $9 in 2027 and increases 7% annually thereafter. So rather than a fixed number of allowances being withheld, all allowances will be withheld under the new price to maintain that partnership. Slide. Chapter 3, as I said, it's completely repealed. Beginning in 2027, offset allowances will no longer be awarded for any offset project categories. There are 3 that exist. They've been removed. Any allowances that were awarded in the past will still be eligible to be used for compliance. That limit is 3.3% of a source's compliance obligation. They cannot use more than 3.3% or yeah, use more than 3.3% of offset allowances for that compliance. And therefore, the compliance language that exists in Chapter 2 is remaining. So, the limited industrial exemption, formerly known as the limited industrial exemption set-aside account. This stays the same as it was before. It still provides an opportunity for budget sources to apply for an exemption for no compliance requirements. It still requires them to their annual electrical output to the grid to be no more than 10% of their gross generation. And it still requires them to submit a climate action plan to the department and requires our approval of that in the reduction of CO2 emissions through additional reduction practices. The change is that the department will no longer be retiring CO2 allowances on their behalf, as we've done in the past. Next slide. The long-term contract set-aside account is gaining an expiration date of January 1st, 2027. This was developed at the onset of the program for specific sources that could show that the participation would negatively impact them financially. The two sources that utilized that account were the Severstall Steel Mill, which took over that steel, and Loop Paper Mill out west. Both of those sources have since ceased operation, and therefore the account is no longer open. Next slide. And finally, just as I said, the clerical changes, definitions have been changed, references have been changed. Most of our incorporation by reference documents refer to offset-related materials. Those have been removed. Monitoring, reporting, and record-keeping language has been streamlined. It says the same thing, but it's now far less wordy. And as I said, records have been correct. That was the end.
Okay, so Linky, Greg in front of you. Thanks for your patience.
One of the things I want to remind the committee of is that this is similar to an EPA execute regulations statement to adopt and incorporate into their regs, right? This is a group of states in the Northeast that have come together on a compact to deal with regional greenhouse gas emissions. And they come to a larger agreement that we're now being asked to incorporate those. So we have very limited to no ability to tinker with what it is that the model says, and so be in compliance with what the group of states has agreed to. But we can't have shuttle diplomacy like that for states and try to work just. That being said, again, recognizing that it's a very long presentation, there's a lot to this. Let's take questions first from the council.
Okay, thanks. So a couple questions. First is based on the it says revenue funds have specific allocations of statute, as mentioned. Are they protected from being repurposed to the general fund?
Those, since those are in statute would have to change to direct revenue funds.
And then folks don't know why maps don't have to number two is, can you talk a little bit about the success of RGGI and link it to the state's climate pollution reduction plan? The state's climate pollution reduction plan, which is our roadmap to achieving the climate solutions now act, includes RGGI as an important program for emission reductions, and not just today's RGGI, but future emissions. Just like for coast, you just link progress of RGGI as it relates to the state.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Good question. So looking backwards first and then forward. Looking backwards, RGGI is one of the programs that is contributed to the really steep declines we've seen in the electricity sector, where we have a very nice, complete policy approach to carbon pollution in the electricity sector. RGGI saying we're going to squeeze out the pollution, renewable portfolio standards saying we're going to build a lot of clean stuff, and the Empower Maryland program saying we're just going to use less electricity to make everything easier. Those three programs have really run up some numbers on the electricity sector side. So if you look at the state's greenhouse gas pollution since 2006, our baseline year for our broader climate change goals, we've done really well. We've reduced pollution very quickly, and it's the electricity sector that's responsible for both of the reductions that we've seen. So RGGI's been a really important part of that, both the regulatory side of the program where we have the cap and the source set supply that produce, but also the investment side of the program, where we've invested north of $1 billion through RGGI in energy efficiency and energy electric vehicle programs. So looking backwards, RGGI has been one of the key programs that has led to our really significant success. And as a reminder, if you look at EPA's national greenhouse gas inventory, which they disaggregate at the state level, look at the pace of reduction from 2005 to current among all the states, Maryland is number one. We're in the top out of all 50 states in that data set. RGGI on that. Looking forward, this update to RGGI is a crucial part of the climate plan that we released end of 2003. That predated this agreement, of course, but we said in the plan that we were going to pursue a really strong RGGI agreement that would put us on a path towards zero carbon electricity system in 2035 or 2040. We ended up on a near-term trajectory that was very good. The states weren't ready to commit to a zero-ton cap in the 2030s because there's so much uncertainty out there. But we're taking steps in that direction in the near term, and we're improving in the long term those timelines that you saw, just because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So RGGI will be an important source of funding for lots of programs going forward, as well as reduction in power plants themselves.
And then when we looked at the electricity bills, I imagine, you looked at it sort of like everybody's the same, but that in reality, that's not the case, right? And I imagine that if there was like another level down and you looked at people's electricity bills, or you looked at, if you're assuming the RIF dollars get spent as allocated, you're actually seeing a greater benefit in low-income households, or perhaps households looking at either sources of pollution. And just wondering, has there been any analysis of sort of the an equity lens program, how that's playing out in electricity bills or household cost savings?
Yeah, that's another good question. That the bill impact analysis I showed was general averages, residential versus commercial versus industrial customers. Did not break it down any more detail than that, but because of how Maryland spends our RGGI proceeds, yes, we would expect the benefits to be greater for lower income households, because half of RGGI proceeds in Maryland go towards bill payment assistance for low income households and qualifying their bills, severe forgiveness. There are lots of programs in that regard. But then also among the other spending categories of RGGI, like energy efficiency, is a focus on energy efficiency projects for low to moderate income households. It's that's a minimum of half the energy efficiency spending. So that way, again, it practice more as and that's important because when you look at the energy burden across income households, lower income households are going to spend fewer dollars on their energy bills than higher income households because they're using less energy. That's a greater proportion of their income. So it's important to prioritize investment in lower income households. That way, so we would expect that RGGI would do that if Maryland spends money, but we have to stay.
Thanks. And then my last question, you may want to vote before you answer it or not. But given the success of RGGI, just curious of the status of expanding this to an economy-wide tax invest, given how critical that program is for achieving the mandates the state has for greenhouse gas emissions.
So RGGI is only the power sector. Yep. It is only power plants. We have considered an economy-wide cap and invest program like exists in other places, U.S. and around the world. We talked about it in the climate plan. It's kind of a discussion with the Climate Commission. Functionally, expanding RGGI to be that would be a challenge because every state would decide to do that. RGGI operates on consensus in its 10 independent state programs. The states are all sovereign, and we all just choose to make decisions together and be consistent with one another. So it operates on a consensus model. It would be a challenge, I think, for all states to do that. So that would have to be some sort of coinciding program. New York has been considering that, building an economy-wide cap and invest program sort of around RGGI. New York is a random state. And so it would be a separate process than the Reggie rules.
It's just been so successful, so it would be a good model that we can put a look at.
Other questions for the council?
Yes, so, given EPA's announcement last week about monitoring CO2, and of course, I'm sure the Reggie states have consider what they're going to do in response. Let's see. Presently, continuing emissions monitoring systems monitor CO2, and evidently that requirement will cease from EPA's point of view. I would imagine the states can continue to require sources under RGGI continue to retain that capability. Any thoughts or concerns about that?
Yes, from a broader perspective, we have lots of concerns. This is referring to EPA's regulatory action to remove greenhouse gas requirements for our sources
Yes.
from federal regulations. Yes, that will have bad impacts naturally. Everybody needs that information in order to manage the pollution problems. Not gathering the information is really not do. In the case of the RGGI state, the RGGI regulations require that as a matter of state law. So I don't believe that we would need to do anything in this direction. I think all the power plants in Maryland is still required to report. Other large facilities affected by that rule are also required to report greenhouse gas pollution to the future permits. So we're gonna. I don't know that I can go 100% the answer for all. So Reggie and our permits to keep that data flowing from the sources. But from other places, it would be.
Okay, thank you.
The questions from council members online. Looking at people else.
Okay, well, thank you. First off, the last question was the first question I was going to ask. So, Chris, we didn't hear your response too well. Like it was a little bit garbled, but I think what you said was that everyone is required by state law to continue to monitor. Is that true of all the RGGI states?
So the RGGI model rule, all the RGGI states have a regulation that's consistent with the RGGI model rule. That's sort of how we make sure that the state's programs all work together. And the model rule does generally require the sources to report their CO2 emissions to their regulator. So I would think at first glance, yes, but each of the states are different. So I can't speak exactly for all of them, but I'm reasonably confident that would be the case in all states, all of the RGGI states.
Great. And then I have a quick comment and a quick other question. My comment is congratulations and kudos to everyone at MDE who's had anything to do with RGGI over the last couple decades. What a great success story. And just, you know, really hoping for the continued perpetuation and success. My last my last question is, could someone update us? Are we the first state to act on this since July? Are we the last? What have other states done with this? You know, how's it going in the other states? Thank you.
Good question. I don't think any state has yet proposed. Other states don't have an AQCAC. So among the AQCAC states, we are the first. I think we are probably the farthest along among the states. We have one of the faster rulemaking processes. All the states have different processes. I hope that we remain the first and move past this. I think that's good. It's good to set that example. So we're probably the farthest out ahead, but we have not yet proposed either.
Chris, did you think that Alex was not sure you told us yet, but process.
Sure. So, assuming a favorable report from the council today, which we hope to receive, we would then propose. Perhaps Carolyn, if you give us an idea, we would propose in the fall.
Yeah, likely, friends, you know, that closer to the end of the year. then we have a hearing date early next year, so it could be effective by spring or summer of next year.
Yes, so we want to finalize the regulations during legislative session, so there's sort of a blackout period there. But we would be able to finalize shortly after session. Hopefully first half of next year, maybe middle of next year without final.
Looks like you're finished with your questions, Ross.
Yep, thank you.
So does anybody else on the council have any more questions or comments?
I have two, just on the changes, just so I understand better. So the exemption one, the department will no longer allocate or retire CO2 allowances on behalf of the exempt CO2 budget source. I don't understand.
So there's an industrial exemption within RGGI. So when we launched RGGI, we had a steel mill and a paper mill. The state decided that the electricity generators at those facilities would not have to buy RGGI allowances. That RGGI wasn't the right mechanism to bring the big manufacturing. Just competitiveness challenges, et cetera. So there's a limited industrial exemption program where any facility that uses at least 90% of what it generates on site and takes that as a permit condition can get this exemption. They don't have to buy RGGI allowances, even though they're a power plant, because they're an those sources, the emissions from those sources were in the baseline with the state's Sarah first half. So the pollution from those sources was in Maryland's budget when we launched the program. So when we decided to exempt them, as the other states largely made consistent decisions, we then had to back them out of the program. And if we had simply exempted them, we would have been allocating a whole bunch of extra allowances that weren't needed because we set our initial budgets based on our initial emissions through those sources. So it was an accounting mechanism to remove them effectively after the fact, where we would take the emissions allowances equal to their emissions every year, and instead of auctioning those and putting them out in the market, we would retire them under a month. Those sources both retired a while ago. We readjusted the cap several times through program use, so cap no longer includes their emissions. And the same goes for the one source that is currently eligible for that exemption in Maryland, which is Cove Point natural gas export facility. So it's sort of this, from our perspective, of this Central Oregon kind of accounting mechanism that's obsolete. The need for still retiring a bunch of allowances on behalf of a source that's exempt from the program. It cost the state probably $22 million last year to do that. That source is not in the modeling, so it's not even accounted when we're setting the new cap. So from a policy perspective, if we're going to exempt it, let's just exempt it. We're getting rid of a bunch.
And then I'm not sure I understand the offsets.
Sure. So carbon offsets are when you have a regulatory cap like RGGI. The scope of that is CO2 power plants.
Yeah.
Offset programs are, the idea behind offsets are that if someone is reducing pollution elsewhere,
yeah,
we give them a credit.
I didn't know what offsets are. I just got to get the change. Sorry.
So we're getting rid of them. RGGI has had offsets since the beginning. There's a history of RGGI across all the states. One offset project has ever taken, only one has ever taken advantage of it. It was a landfill here in Maryland out on the shore. There are a very small number of offset allowances. That project is done. And so the offset program has not been used. It's administratively complicated. The states all decided for that reason and others, all the state programs. Scott mentioned about half the state funded offsets last program.
Stakeholders are cool with that, and nobody's saying, "Oh, I was hoping."
I'm sure there are project developers who would like to, they each other review their project developers who come and try to suggest changes to the offset program, but it's just never taken. So no, I don't want to say that nobody would be happy with that. So, there's growing change your mind.
Questions from the council. Hearing none, anybody else from the public, either online or in the room, have any questions or comments or making statements? The public, yes, And so without, there's a motion to approve the regulation. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Regulation is. And I believe that brings us to the end of our morning, unless I'm missing it.
Oh, maybe I'll just mention that we are scheduled for December 8th. Thank you, Randy, on top of it. So we are scheduled to meet this December 8th. We will include, among other things, our annual update where we sort of look back on everything the council's considered the last year and give an idea of what to expect for next year.
Excellent. Thank you all very much, both from the MDE staff and from the council participation. We will see you in December. Meeting is adjourned.